Good morning or good afternoon. It's 12:21. Part of the 1.5. So, prayer requests. I want to tell you more about the story in regards to these keys and everything in general. So, I had a boss named Michael Suvero. And Michael Suvero and I was an intern when I was in law school. I was taking classes at NYU in pre-law. And I want to tell you about a story. I want to bring something up. So, never pay. So, when I took the LSAT exam, I took the LSAT exam twice. I had a learning disability. And part of the thing that I want to bring up is prometrics as well. When I took these exams for New York Life, and I had to go through first, in order for you to get hired at like a financial institution or a place like Key Bank or any of the banks, you have to go through a background check. They have to make sure that you don't have any criminal record. So, I'm going to explain something to you which I need to bring up, which has to do with LL Bean and has to do with order numbers. So, when I was a lot younger, there was a company called LL Bean, and their headquarters is in Maine. You can look it up. And what happened was they go by order date number, order number, and they use the UPS post office, or not the US, the US or UPS for tracking, to give you an idea of the directions. Do you want it express delivery? Do you want all of this stuff? Now, all of this stuff with this delivery system has to do with this life and health insurance and commerce law, which I will explain or make it simple as possible. I'll see if I have the book. I probably have it. It's probably tucked in here somewhere. So, I'm going to show you some books. I'm going to do the very best I can so that it's oriented towards you guys, so it's oriented to young kids so they can see what it's like. So I have books, see? I'll just show it to you. In my room that I read, and when I read these books like this, economics in the college, see, and I have notepads, and so this is one of my books that I had, EMT. So when I was in the Belmore Fire Department, in the fire department, you have to take 2 courses to get off probation. And you have to be there for a year or 2 years, depending. It's a course requirement to join a volunteer organization. So, my books that are here that I read, and I did research and development all on this stuff. So, like this book, The Complete Kama Sutra. So, just like anything else, I want to get into depth is I want to tell you a little bit of background of my family history. My name was Gaetjens, Gaetjens, but it wasn't originally Gaetjens. When my relative came here from Ellis Island, most of the people that came on the boats from Germany or Italy or Ireland or United Kingdom, they had to go on boats, and they had to go through a version of what you call a background check. They had to make sure you weren't sick, you didn't have any, viruses in your system, and etc. So, this book I'm just going to go into depth because it says on the top, NASA Community College. This is an old book of mine. So, when I was in college, and I'm on page 73 on laissez-faire, and it says literally, leave it alone. So, showing it to you. Most economic majors, that study this system to begin with. This is McGraw-Hill. There's different forms of books that are out there that go into depth of, like, they can go into one subject, as an example, intermediate accounting. Some of these courses, like at Queens or these schools, they said to me, you have to retake courses. So Mark Rubenstein is a rabbi. But prior to this episode, I said Mark Rubenstein. He's, most doctors or lawyers or etc., they go by the DR and Mark Rubenstein. So, how I met Dr. Rubenstein, who is a rabbi, is I was at Belmore Fire Department and I was at St. John's taking a paramedic course. I took the MTB course, the CC course, and the paramedic. The reason why I'm bringing up life and health insurance is it has to do with things that have to do with annuities, and it has to do with federal regulations. It has to do with the Privacy Act of 1974. And all of these courses that I took, because in New York Life, they want you to pass. But the whole purpose of you taking these courses, because all of this stuff with the life and health insurance, which is 300 multiple choice questions, they want you to pass the course, and when you pass this course, it teaches you about underwriting process. So, I had not that I met the person, but I had annuities. Okay, Chapter 11. 222. Go into depth. Annuities. So, I'll tell you a little bit of story. I had a mentor in college, and his name was Mr. Roslin. He was a real estate person. And Mr. Roslin, I met him when I was in Brooklyn because I had problems at Queens. There were people that were just being, which I'm going to explain when I speak to certain people and I write a book. I'm eventually going to write a book about my life. I was discriminated against. I had a learning disability, and I went to take these exams, and everything was a problem. Person goes on the exam, the system shuts down. So when this pandemic was going on, I just want to tell you guys, and I told my aunt, and my aunt says, John, you have to get in touch with a lawyer. I got in touch with a lawyer. You have to fight for your rights because, I want to be held responsible. I don't want to be made fun of or be laughed at in court. But I also don't want to be lied to. And a lot of these students out there, it's difficult. So, when I was in the college, one of my professors was an attorney, and he said, you're going to have a problem because we as professors, we're adjunct, but we don't get involved in grades. Mr. Elon said, if, let's just say, there's an exam that comes up and you have to take this exam, because I took Business Law 3 and it talks about UCC, which has to do with life and health insurance, which has to do with contracts and commerce law. Commerce law is a big thing in law school, and it's big on not the LSAT. It's not only important in LSAT, it's important in passing the bar. And you have to learn about elder abuse, because in the life and health insurance, most of these insurance companies, they want you to sell a life insurance policy. Prudential, all these companies, they just want you to sell life insurance. So the reason why I'm bringing this book up here, my boss, Michael Subaru, he was in Parker Wakeman, and I hit a wall at New York Life. I was there for several years. And Joseph C., I'm not going to mention his last name, or John C., one was a president, the other one was like a vice president or assistant, and they were both administrators or supervisors, you may say. And I went into the room, and I was with my friend at the time. His name was Matt Wolf. And Matt and I were in New York Life. And there's another person, I'm just going to mention, he's another John. And basically what happened was, there was a company called 2020 Companies. They sold Verizon. They'd have a lanyard where it would say, John whatever. You would get a business card. You would get a paper. They'd have a computer, like a Dell computer. And they would sell insurance, and it was door-to-door sales. Well, Matt and I were very, very good at it, but the issue was that they never paid. So let's say if there was a sale and it was $100 of a commission. Well, the problem is that Sloman's Oil brought up with me, and I had set up things specifically in that way with security systems, meaning they have a camera system that monitors your house. You pay a certain amount of money a month. Sloman said to me, he said, my friend at the time, his name's Amadeus. Amadeus said to me, John, there were people that used to work at those companies, but it went bankrupt because they weren't paying people. They were supposed to get paid, and they called Department of Labor up. They would call up Department of Labor, and they would say that they're not getting paid, and there would be no pay stub. So after a certain amount of people, Department of Labor hired a private investigator or somebody that works from the state or the federal that would protect your rights. So there was a class action lawsuit going on. And the problem is, see, when I was at that company, and there was another company I was going to join, but I didn't do it, was called Lakeview Consultants, and they did a version of what 2020 Companies did. But the problem is, it's not a Ponzi scheme. The thing is that I learned with these companies, and I had another friend of mine, I told him advice to get out of that company. There was a company that was similar to that sold windows, doors, they sold roof, they did consulting, but it was a company like that. I think it was called Nations United, but it's not there anymore. It used to be in Hempstead, and they used to work with companies like Anderson or AT&T. There was companies out there that used to do things like that. But the problem is, it's not a Ponzi scheme. The problem is, they had you read a script. And not that I ratted on anyone, the issue was with the health insurance and everything. You make a sale. Let's just say you make a sale. It's $100 or $200. Well, you have to make a sale like every day, and that's very difficult to do. So certain jobs that were commission-based income, just like a car salesman, I told my friend Frank at the time, you can't do this Nations United because you're going to have problems. And he says, what? I told him I went in for an interview, And the guy gave me a story, and I said to him, "Why exactly are you, I'm applying? What exactly is the contract going to be?" And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, this is something that lawyers and accountants don't tell certain people. When you go into a meeting with interview, and this is something I hope young adults do research on, and I hope they check this. You need to have a resume set up. You need to go in there as soon as person says, 'Do you have any questions?' Get a blank sheet of paper. Ask as many questions as possible, because they're in the video that I explained on the computer. You're either in it or into it. Now, in it or into it is a big difference. You're going to go in there serious as a business person, or you're going to go in there and it ain't going to work." That's what happened with my friend Bernard. He was a police officer. And I was in security. And the problem was with security in a lot of these companies like construction. I'll show you this thing I got from my uncle's relatives. My relative or my friend Glenn got me a job. So this is my bag. And when I was a lot younger, I just like that Clint Eastwood movie where the guy gives him a tape. I got scissors. I got a screwdriver. I'm measuring things. So I had a tool. These are my tools that I had. This I used when I was a young lad. And the reason why I want to tell you this story is because I met this person, Khloe Kardashian, out of the blue. In the city, they have a plumbing union, number 1, and electrical union, number 3. And I was 15 years old. The college had a senior experience program that you could go into a union or it could go into a job. And I asked a relative of mine, not my relative that joined the fire department, but my relative that did certain things. So the first thing I did was when I was a junior firefighter for Belmore. That was a junior. There's a juniors program. It helps you get a scholarship. You go to Nassau Community College, pays for the school. The second thing I did was I joined the AmeriCorps. Now, what I did was with the AmeriCorps, I joined the Public Defender's Office. I joined the doctor's offices. Now you say, well, what do you mean by you joined the doctor's? Well, there are programs out there that pay for your college. You get a grant. You get scholarship. They give you a financial aid. You do a work study program, which I did in college. Now, you may say to me, "Hey, John, what is this? You're practicing Muslim. You're all of a sudden, John, you're Christian. You went from becoming Christian to becoming Jewish. Like, what happened?" And a lot of my friends says, "What happened to you in regards to this? Why did you turn your back against Christ?" It's not I turned my back against the Christ. It's that Jesus and many of those followers to begin with. I'm not against what Christ did. But what I am going to say is this. There is a lot of things in this Christianity that does not make any sense. Now, you may say to me, "John, what does that mean?" It means that when I was a young person, you have to question certain things in life. So, perfect example. This book is not the same as this book right here. All the Jewish people, I don't mean to be ridiculous, when they read everything in Hebrew and they go from right to left. In our English, we go from left to right. Now, in their traditions, like in Arabic, you go from right to left. Because when you study language, which I had a learning disability, they don't teach you certain things. In regards to Hebrew and Aramaic, which is Hebrew and Arabic, and even Urdu, which is part of those languages, which is I learned when I was taught by professors. You have to understand that there's a complete difference between what Christianity is taught and what Judaism is taught. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Those people that are Jewish, they do have certain things correct, but they don't have certain things correct. Just like David or Solomon with practicing all of this stuff, or the computer system. There are people out there that Halloween comes around, and I'm just going to say this. Halloween this is something that I did bring up with my friends, which my friends, I had some of my friends that practice certain things, I had to just walk away from them. I couldn't be a party person. My mother and father said, John, you're going to lose friends in life, because there are people out there that they're hindrance. They're going to cause you problems. So my friend John Beck and I, we had to walk away from certain people. And my friend Peter and my friend Eric, one became a radiologist, the other one became a doctor. Eric and I had to have a serious talk with a version of a priest. And I had a problem. I didn't have an addiction to drugs. I had a problem was that, not that I made up stories, I had a problem with being lied to. Seeing Christianity, and something that Mark Rubenstein did bring up to me, which people are going to yell and scream at me. When you go on a cross, and something I'm going to question Jesus Christ on, when you go on that cross, and out there are problems, and every day I'm knocking on doors, not just knocking on doors like you think. I'm just wanting to get answers. And I'm waiting for answers. And no offense, even if Joshua, who is Yahshua Mashiach, is his other name, even if he was here, I would say this question, and it's not a question that's for the fainted-hearted. It's a question that needs to be explained, that Joshua needs to start telling the truth, as well as many of the people in the Vatican. Why exactly are you, Christianity people, why are you celebrating Halloween and Christmas when Nimrod, who is a paganite, and in these books here, because I don't play games, I don't question what Jesus did was correct. I question why you guys are kissing a wall. You know what Jesus would do? This is something that I laugh at. So, I see on the YouTube, you're kissing the thing. Because of mwah, mwah, you're kissing the thing. You know what that's like for a man? That's like kissing ass. No offense. I don't mean to be rude. Kissing tuchus, a butt. Why are you kissing a wall? What the heck is that wall? You're kissing a wall? Jerusalem, no offense, I don't mean to be rude to you. Jerusalem, and this is something I told a lot of people, Jerusalem, it's a land that is not allowed to be touched. You cannot touch that land. Joshua and those people, that's something that I did bring up. And I had debates with people, with priests and rabbis and the Pope and the whole 9 yards. Joshua was born April, I think, 17th or 13th, by specifically looking at historical facts. He was not born in December. So what you guys are doing in Christianity, you're praising or worshiping what they call demonic things. He wasn't born in December. That's incorrect. He was born in April. Most of those books that the Tanakh or the Torah will say it, or they knew, predetermined, they knew Jesus was going to come. Yes, some Jewish people believe he is a Messiah. Some Jewish people don't believe he's a Messiah. But what I will say about the rabbi, which Matt Goldberg, who was a rabbi, who was a neurologist, said, some of you guys, you're living in a psychosis. You're living in a psychosis because you're practicing paganism. No Christian should practice paganism. Marcus, the messenger, who does these versions of these podcasts, said it. You know, he would have a monitor, like this, and he would have a screen, and he would say Genesis, whatever, this. Well, I'm going to tell you something. What he says about staying away from women, and there are witches out there, and they practice magic, that's all true. That is completely true. I do agree with it. I do agree that some of that, I've heard stories where, no offense, I was in California. It's a whole different animal. It's like going to an animal zoo. I don't mean to be rude by saying it. New York is an animal zoo as well, because you're dealing with people, and people are very different. So, in regards to these cards, what I will say, it's just like Vegas with Sin City, or the City of Angels. When I was on a flight with Alexis and Diana, and we would go on flights on America Airlines or Delta, and we would go to Europe, and we would see our relatives. Here's the thing that I want to bring up, which I started laughing. My relative, when Diana and I were together, we would have a backpack. We would have one bag. She'd have a bag on, I'd have a bag on. She would pay her bill, I would pay my bill. We would go into the same hotel. We were on what you call missions. Now, our relatives are very, very difficult to deal with. Some of those relatives that I mentioned names prior to this, they're very difficult. Not that they're in what you call, they're in the business of getting things done. So, it's 28 minutes, and I figured I'd just tell you this story. So, I met a person named Uncle Alex. Not my relative, but a relative that I met that's from one of these organizations that's very difficult. He's a very difficult person to deal with. My relative, Uncle Alex, told me, in the future, you're going to have problems with artificial intelligence. And they would say to me, why? I would say to him, on the flight, because Diana was on the left-hand side. I was sitting here, I'm in first class, and he would say to me, he's across away, you're going to have problems with artificial intelligence. And I would say, why? And he would say, well, they're going to try and build the mark of the beast. They're going to try and, just like this wipes, they're going to try and wipe people's memory. And you're going to say, well, what the heck does that mean? Well, those people that are actors or actresses They're all clones. And I started, myself and Diana, who is known as Coconut Kitty, started laughing. I started laughing because I thought he was out of his mind. And he says, no, kid. No, kid. No, kid. No, Junior. So why are you calling me Junior? It's just something I say. Those people, they got two separate lives. In reality, when they're actors or actresses or models, they portray themselves, they go to those shows. And he said it. He was much old. He was in his 70s. This is a couple of years ago. This is way before all this stuff with this contract stuff. He told me, you guys have problems with artificial intelligence. SAG goes into problems with artificial intelligence. You have a famous actress that was in the Marvel movies. She wasn't getting paid correctly. He said it way before all of this stuff. Secondly, he said they're going to try and do this. I told a lot of these people in the past, and I wrote notes. They're going to try and do a pandemic. He knew about it. CIA knew about it. The FBI knew it. They all knew about it. It was pre-orchestrated. So when Alex Jones says to you he's a conspiracy theorist, when he says to you, hey, this is true, it's true. Because I saw it. I felt the papers. I was there. I sat where, not where I didn't sit where the president was, but I was there. And I had to testify. So the reason why I'm doing this video, and I'm going to finish it up, I outsmarted certain people by doing simple things. And to the people out there that do Interpol or MI6, they do foreign intelligence, the reason why I'm doing this Uncle John video is I'm trying to explain to you guys that when I did accounting a lot of the stuff, when you go into those rooms and they're required to have HEPA filters, meaning they have to have a device that has clear oxygen, meaning that when they filter out the system, just like a water bottle, it has to be a certain grade because the fire marshals in Europe, they weren't up to code. So when they weren't up to code, it never passed. So a lot of times I'll show you this coffee cup. This is a pretty good demonstration. A lot of times when I was in law school, I would do this. I'd have coffee cups ready. And I didn't lie to people when I said, if you're not up to code, how are you running a business? Well, it's the same thing with running a bank or commerce law. How are you doing business if you have everything in life has to get verified? You have to have verification. You can't have verification on a computer system. It has to be in person. So when you have a Chase account or Wells Fargo and it says type in a code system, you're not allowed to do that because in commerce law and UCC, this is something that my professor, I had 5 of them, said it. If you start doing codes, you have to, how can you check somebody's identity? ID me, Zelle, they never verified anything. So when unemployment happened and all of these things were transpiring, it never got fixed. So what Uncle Alex has said to me, this is in 2000 whatever, this is a couple years ago, he was right. And I had to sit there and I'm thinking about it. I'm happy that I'm okay, but some of my friends that are attorneys or accountants, they don't know what to do. What do? You can't, how can you run a business? You have, listen, I had in my room here, my parents' room, you have to have things to verify everything. You got to have a verification system. And if you don't, you're going to have problems. The 3 credit bureaus had filed lawsuits. Capital One got sued. Wells Fargo got sued. Chase got sued. YouTube was taking your email information and sending it on the black market, and the attorney general who was in New York never said anything. She said children. She didn't say adults. They were doing it to adults. 4 major hospitals had problems with the pandemic because the insurance company was only covering a certain amount of costs. And in regards to this life and health insurance license, like annuities or pension, they weren't telling you the truth. They were lying. So when I was in court and I was doing injury with Michael and my other boss Robert or another Michael, when I was with them, they said it to me. How are you passing anything? Everything in life requires a contract. You have to have a property taxes, contract. All this stuff, it has to do with contract. Harvard University, when you take the LSAT and you give them the grades and you go throughout life, you have to have a version of a contract. If you don't have a version of a contract or it's not in writing, what you're saying to me and a lot of those people out there is BS. The news people are BSing you. They're not telling you, they're telling you their version of the story. They're not telling you the biased version. And that's something that's got to get done. So take care, guys. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. And stay blessed.